Uh, Richard is an Episcopal priest who joins us here at Nazareth House, and he'll tell us all about his history, at least all that we can fit into a half hour or so. So, Richard Allen Miller, you were born May 4th, 1941 in Philadelphia, Temple University Hospital. And the rest is history. So tell us a little bit about that history. Maybe start with talking a little bit about your family. Anything you would like to tell us about your family?
Well, not many people know where they were. They know where they were born, but they don't know necessarily where they were conceived. I can tell you that, for one.
Okay. Will you tell us that?
My parents lost what would have been a older brother 3 years before I was born. He was full term at death. Lost the baby full term. It was so difficult on my parents. I can't imagine now as a father of 3 what that was like, even to lose children at death of any age before the parents go. So they were told by my mother's gynecologist, he recommended a longer than usual vacation. So they decided to take a trip to the Great Smokies in North Carolina. So I was literally a native of North Carolina, not Pennsylvania. I was conceived there, so I was alive.
Well, now that leads me to the question, have you turned had the cabin that they were living in on that vacation, have you turned that into a shrine?
No, I don't know where they were.
Oh, you mean it might have been in the woods?
I just know when.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
January of 1940. Oh no,
Okay.
41, I'm sorry.
Okay.
January of 41. And there were a lot of babies born that following May because of cold months where we lived in Pennsylvania. Very cold months in the winter.
All right, shall we move along? Your parents were Mary and Charlie, right?
Mary and Charlie, right.
And any stories about after you were born, or your growing up, or family, or going to school?
I think one of the funniest stories that I can remember anyhow, my parents had friends by the name of Liz and Lyle, and they lived in Westchester, Pennsylvania. We have one too.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to visit Lyle and Liza in the summer. They were having a picnic. I don't know how old I was. My guess would be like 4, 6. And I picked up the hose outside and gave it a spray. Right up to the screen in the kitchen. And I got Liz and Earl soaked. My parents didn't think it was funny. In fact, nobody thought it was funny except me. Now, I didn't understand that, so I probably would have understood at an older, wiser age.
Mm-hmm. But now we all think it's funny.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, now I've been they'd put water on babies for 52 years. And we didn't think it was funny. We thought it was sacred.
Mhm.
And that the water was holy.
Okay. When we talked earlier, you mentioned something about a fifth grade teacher.
My fifth grade teacher, Margaret Carpenter, was probably the greatest teacher I ever had in my whole life. She was such a role model to all of us. She was always dressed nicely. She always kept her hair nicely. She was kind to everyone, no matter who it was. She came to us each day from Philadelphia. She commuted toward us rather than commuting the other way toward the city, because she lived there.
Now, where exactly did you live at that time, and where was the school?
I lived in Paoli, and the school was a Green Tree School. It was just about a mile west of Paoli.
Oh, okay. And you have always been an avid tennis player, as well as a sailor. How did you get interested in tennis? Or how did you get interested in sailing?
I haven't thought about tennis for a long time, but there were two old wooden tennis rackets that were strung with real gut. They were up in the storage room up on the second floor of our house. So Ted was my best friend, and I decided at one point to go outside to the tennis court down the street and hit them around. Well, we both hit pretty hard, and the ball went right through each of the rackets. So I had, my beginning of tennis was two broken rackets, and not much of a game.
So you could only go upwards from there.
Yeah, we bought a couple of cheap rackets from Corvettes. Do you remember Corvettes?
Yeah.
Did you have that out here? Yeah, Corvettes was, I think, the first, what they call it today, big box store.
Ah, okay.
And I played tennis. I realized when I was invited to a lot of my friends that I eat with out on the porch to attend my 52nd ordination party. I realized I had played tennis for more than 52 years.
Mm-hmm. And can you tell us a little about your seminary time and your ordination? And of course, as an Episcopal priest, you were married before your ordination, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and your wife is Linda.
Mm-hmm.
And is there a story? Is there a story about Linda that you can tell? That is.
Oh, yes. Well, quite a few, yeah. Well, Linda right now is visiting our youngest son, Brian, and his wife Jennifer, and the boys. They were babies when I left a couple of years ago, but they're probably 3 and 5 now, and we miss them a lot. Brian moved back to Pennsylvania. He loved it so much, and he could not understand why Linda and I moved here to Pennsylvania. Not many years ago, though. We came out to Pennsylvania from Pennsylvania primarily because our daughter lived in Santa Monica, and our son at the time was in Burbank. Since we came, he moved back to Pennsylvania. It was like that joke. It was in the book, the daily the daily schedule or the daily comics, whatever we'd like to call it, from Father Tom. A story where the little boy was attending a wedding with his parents, and he was told that the reason the bride was wearing white was because she was happy on her wedding day, the most joyous day of her life. So there was a lot of fussing around up front in the church. They saw they were having the communion, and everybody was dressed up, even the people in church. Which reminds me of my favorite story from Tom. The favorite story was just sitting in church all the time doesn't make you a good Christian.
Amen.
Just as standing around in your garage is not going to create in you a shiny new convertible.
That sounds good.
But they were all dressed up for the wedding. So
For your wedding?
No. It's a story.
The story. Yeah.
Book. So
Okay. Well, tell us about your wedding.
Our wedding was in my home parish because Linda's Lutheran Church in Coopersburg, Pennsylvania, about 100 miles to the north, they were building a new church. At the time, they didn't have much more than the superstructure arranged.
Mm-hmm.
So our church was intact. So that's where we were married.
That's where you were married. Okay. And what about your parish assignments? What sort of parishes did you serve in after you were ordained?
Well, it's a lot more complicated in the Episcopal Church than an assignment because we are not assigned. We are free agents.
Okay.
We must be elected by a search committee, approved by a vestry in the parish, and approved by the bishop of the diocese.
So you had to give an interview also, and
Yes.
there was a fairly competitive process.
Yes, but you didn't really know who your competitors were.
Uh-huh.
So they called it the power of the Spirit. It's because they didn't have any facts at the time. So it was by inspiration within the search committee
Mm-hmm.
that came up with people like me.
Mm-hmm. I made some notes. It's hard for me to read them, however. You very often were chaplain to a school, grade school, right?
Yes, for First Parish, I was
First
the
Parish.
curate, the assistant to the rector, and chaplain of nursery through 8th grade school in Church of the Advent, Westbury, Long Island.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Tell us about, at some point in your priestly career, you took a sabbatical. And the sabbatical, tell us about that sabbatical.
Yes, not usually you associate sabbaticals with teachers, and that always was, and still is. My contract with the vestry, though, had a clause that permitted me a week of earned sabbatical for every year I served, a paid week.
In addition to vacation, right?
In addition to vacation, to be used once in 5 weeks or more and not to exceed seven weeks.
Mm-hmm.
7 weeks is traditional sabbatical time.
Mm-hmm. So where did you go? What did you do on that sabbatical?
The first sabbatical, we took a pilgrimage to Israel, to the Holy Land. It sounded like a vacation in the Middle East as far as a lot of people were concerned, but what it really meant was we traveled with a bunch of serious Christian people who had signed up for a pilgrimage that was being led by a Scottish Presbyterian minister and his son, who was a young adult, not much older than me. We walked the steps that Jesus walked, the worn steps of Jerusalem that he walked on the way to his crucifixion. It was a very moving experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that contributed a great deal to my preaching and my teaching over the years. Thus, a sabbatical, a time of refreshment, a time away from your usual work, to explore in a way that's going to enrich you, give you a rest, give you a change, give you a break from the normal. And that it did. To have group communion with this group of people that we got to know. We traveled together on a bus. To have communion with these people on the mountain where they say Jesus fed the 5,000 with loaves and fish. Imagine that. And then we were about 100 on the mountain. It was just a hill to most people, but it was a very sacred place to me.
Mm-hmm.
What was the most memorable of all of that trip to that communion was on along the edge of the Sea of Galilee. What was most memorable about it to me was seeing Peter's home. He was an ordinary fisherman, not unlike we would find at many ports in the United States that have fishermen spend their life. Every time I went sailing, I saw fishing boats coming in and out of Brigantine, New Jersey, on the edge of Barnegat Bay, which is the way in and out from the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. Some of you may not be as familiar with that, but very similar to the Pacific Ocean.
Well, I would think that means something to you, especially being an avid sailor yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I sailed for at least 25 years. Peter's home on the edge of the Sea of Galilee they had plexiglass that you could see through into the remains of the home, which was like going on an archaeological dig without the hammer, without the brush.
Without getting dirty.
Without getting dirty. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, that was quite the experience of a lifetime.
Yeah, that really was. Yeah.
Now, you spent 20 years as rector of St. Francis in the Fields in Malvern, Pennsylvania.
Yes, that was just a few miles west of Paoli, where I grew up. So I returned from 20 years of ministry to Pennsylvania and spent the last 20 years of my active ministry right near where I grew up.
And you mentioned something about that was a time of experience of parish growth.
Yes, we were blessed to have a terrific welcoming committee. We just had a first meeting of the current welcoming committee last week in this room. We talked about many of the same things, about the friendship here, the friendships with many people that you make. You come here maybe knowing none of these folks, but you meet a lot of great people. And a lot of old people. I don't think I knew a 90-year-old until I was 4 years of age. And they were in my church. And we started a ministry with some of the people who were originally on the church growth committee. We started a ministry to the aging in a nearby home for the aging. And it really developed into quite a wonderful ministry of the church. But to return to the church growth committee, I had a number of people that worked with me. We developed a design for real church growth to occur. Growth that would involve not just new numbers of new people, but ways of studying, listening, going places together as a group in the parish so that we could grow, learn, experience one another, experience the power of the Holy Spirit in drawing us toward God, toward Christ, toward each other. As it turned out, we ended up having the fastest growing parish in the whole diocese. At the time, 175 parishes. It's a big diocese.
And then you retired. And they gave you a good send-off, or did they keep you around a little? I think you mentioned something about being chaplain to parish day schools when you were retired.
Oh, no.
No,
No, it was chaplain when it was first ordained.
Right.
That at the first job as chaplain of a parish day school, I went to be headmaster of an already established nursery through sixth grade school on the South Shore. We brought that school through eighth grade, changed the curriculum a lot, the kind of teachers we hired. That was wonderful. I love to work with children. When I was in my second parish, which was the biggest Episcopal church in the Diocese of Washington, in Chevy Chase, Maryland. We had the biggest youth group in the diocese. We had 75 children confirmed the first year I was there. They had an active church growth group. We gained 1,000 new members in 1969 when I went there to begin 10 years of associate rector of a huge parish. So much to learn, so many interesting opportunities, so many strangers to each other and to me who became friends. Some fast friends, some lifetime friends, some of them are still friends.
Oh, wonderful. Now, you had your first stroke in 2005.
Yeah.
And is that when you retired? Or did you retire before that?
No, I was retired, unbelievably enough. Yes, 2000. I had two events in my life that changed just about everything for me. Don also had two of these. He knows what I'm talking about. A stroke came out of nowhere. I didn't even know much about strokes. I spent time in the hospital with people that had strokes, time in nursing homes and rehab centers with them. But as it turned out, I learned something about myself which I didn't like and still fear. I have in me what's called type 5 Leiden, Leiden, like the German pronunciation Leiden. It's a blood or abnormality. Abnormality. See, that's part of what happened. I could barely speak. I was I almost died with a second one. I had a second stroke in 2012. I'll intermingle them if you don't mind. If you can't understand me, just raise your hand. You might be volunteering for the welcoming committee, but raise your hand anyhow. Yeah,
But you did, after your first stroke, you did learn to play tennis again.
I did. I ran across a man from a senior community near us. And someone told me to call him, and they gave me gave me his telephone number. I called him. He invited me to play tennis with him. He had a stroke 3 months before. And he was a ranked tennis player in his 80s at the time. And I was in my 60s. So this ranked, he played clay court player. The first time he hit it to me, I missed the ball completely. That's what put me in the hospital. I played tennis every Monday night with the same group. My best friend Larry was my dentist. You'd think I'd have better looking teeth than I do. But I miss his presence in my life. I'll call him tonight and tell him that people were talking about him today.
Well, he can watch the video on YouTube.
Oh, really? Wow. That's nice. I hope he's finally learned to use a computer. If it weren't for his second wife, he would be living in the dark ages.
Oh, my.
She's a real techie. She really took to it.
So this pretty much brings us up to the present, skipping and jumping over various things. Is there anything that we missed in your life that you would like to talk about?
Well, the passions of my life were tennis, sailing. I sailed for 25 years on the bay, Quantica Bay, and the ocean, Chesapeake Bay before that. The feel of going a blood-curdling 7.5 knots per hour in a sailboat of 28 feet. It's like going from riding along in the creek to get to the bay, and then all of a sudden you experience this wind and this motion of the wave. You dig the what is it called?
Rudder?
Yeah, you dig the rudder. in a small sailboat, you take the wheel, the one I had in retirement, you take the wheel and you pull it, turn its back hard, and it takes all your strength to hold it. And the sails are full of air, and the waves you can feel in the ocean, the bay you can feel the current too, and that's pulling on you. The waves are pushing and pulling. Someone asked me, people have asked me many times. I had a sailboat for sale once, and many people asked me, well, is it difficult to learn how to sail? And I said, no, it's the simplest thing in the world. Oh, I said, no, it's really complicated. I said, no, you just point the boat forward, and if it goes, you've got air behind you. If it doesn't go, you've got air coming in your face. Now, that's not too difficult to figure out.
All right.
So you have to have your sails full to sail.
Yeah. But then you have to learn to tack, don't you?
Yes.
And, all that sort of thing.
To sail
partially is a little more complicated.
Partially into the wind, yes. Right. You think that's physically impossible till you learn how to do it.
Mm-hmm. So,
passions in my life.
Any last, any parting words? Or shall we see if anybody has questions for you first? Any questions?
Well, where was Richard when just before he moved to Nazareth House?
My wife and I were living in our home in Santa Monica. We have a home in Village Park. It's in the northeast corner of Santa Monica, and it's a place of, I would say, townhouse condominiums. They were contemporary when they were built in 1972. So I guess you would still call it a contemporary design. 75 homes, in a lot of ways, like this place, because there may be 75 people, each have their own little home within the bigger home. They all have to get to know each other if they want to do anything together, which they do. Linda's been in charge of a training for an earthquake. She had taught people in education sessions, taught mostly an elderly community, definitely over 62. Mm-hmm. I would say mostly over 72, and a few 82 and above. So we lived there before I came here. I need help trying to live. I mean, I had my second stroke. I was in intensive care for 10 days. One of the doctors told my wife and oldest son to meet together one night and go to the funeral home of our choice and make arrangements for my funeral. That wasn't because I was going to die, but because he was afraid I was going to die. Now, he was one of a team of physicians, but my funeral arrangements were made. I don't know, when I was second stroke. I don't remember dates as well as I used to. A lot of things I don't remember as well as I used to.
Of course, everybody here can identify with that.
Yes.
We don't remember as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we've been at it for a little more than a half hour. So is there any one last burning question that somebody has? Ethel?
I want to know how you experienced your call to become a priest.
How you experienced your call to become a priest?
Well, let me tell you two childhood events. One was riding my bike down the sidewalk past my grandparents' house. My grandparents, maternal grandparents, lived two houses from us. So I grew up with two mothers, my mother, Mary, and my grandmother, Florence. And my grandpa, who didn't have any hair on his head. He was the only bald man that I knew. I used to pop him on the head a lot. And he'd be cutting the hedge, and I'd go up next to him, and I'd pop him on the head. Like sister, Jean Marie, she pops people on the back. She likes to tap him on the right shoulder, and I look around, she's over there, left her shoulder,
Okay, you said two incidents that influenced your call to be a priest.
Riding down the sidewalk on my bike one day, I just came into my mind that God rides with me. And I thought about that a lot through my childhood. God was with me other places too. And God was really with me on Christmas Eve. He was really with me on the egg hunts we did with our children. I had 3 children. I was blessed with a wife with whom I wanted to have children. And after the first, we wanted more. She was from a family of 5. I was from a family of 1. Well, 3 with my parents. I was an only child because the brother died 3 years before me. So I was blessed with this woman who was a wonderful wife and mother, and blessed with these 3 children. And we became a family, and I hope a loving and open family. We shared the same politics, the same religion. In fact, I met Linda at a party in Philadelphia, 1 block from the seminary. Went to a party that night for interns and nurses. Turned out it was a party for nurses and mostly seminarians. Yes, that's what was in that fieldstone bunch of buildings down the street, just west of the University of Pennsylvania campus. Yes, there were a bunch of hungry young men living in that building. Yeah, they didn't know that. They thought there were a bunch of priests down there because they saw people walking around with academic gowns on. That's what we wore in seminary. They sort of filled with air if you ran from building to building.
So did some good marriages come out of that party? One did, we know.
Believe it or not, I don't think there were more than 12 people at that party. 3 marriages came out of that party. We got a Lutheran, a Roman Catholic, and a Unitarian. How's that for church growth?
How's that for church growth? Yay!
before we even had a church.
Yeah. Well, Richard, this has been wonderful. It's we've been at it for 40 minutes now. So
Well,
time flies when
Well,
you're
you
having
know,
fun. Huh?
I was blamed for a lot of things when I was in ministry, and credited with a few. But you know, they never complained that I had too short of a sermon. Never in 46 years did one person complain, "Why don't you preach longer sermons, Richard? What's wrong with you?" I don't know.
On that happy note, thank you so much, Richard, for gracing us with your presence.